thanks so much for doing for wanting to be on the podcast
Oh,
and
thanks for having
doing an
me.
interview. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right into Hypothetical Baby and
Uh-huh.
talk about that. What's the Hypothetical Baby's origin story?
I had an abortion and then I wrote a play about it. The end.
Amazing. I love.
Like
That's
this is
awesome.
most simply put, that's kind of it.
Right from experience. That's what they say. That's what they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And you have the one woman show coming up this April, right?
No, sooner than that. It's from
Oh, February.
February 22nd to March 8th.
That's it. That's it. Excellent. That's awesome. And where is it playing? Just so people
At
can come see.
at Factory Theater.
At Factory Theater.
Yeah.
Amazing. That is so
Yeah.
cool. How long is the one woman show?
I think it's like 80 minutes. It's one and done. It's like you start, you go through it, and then you can go have a drink.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. Is this the first one woman show you've written?
Yeah, I've never written a solo show or done a solo show before. So there you go.
Nice. That's awesome. And did you reach out or do any classes, or you just sat down and started writing? What was the process of making
Yeah,
it?
I kind of just sat down and started getting on with it. Like I'm an appreciator of the solo art form. Like I've certainly have consumed a lot, and wherever ideas come to us from or whatever, like whenever it was in my brain and I was kind of like in a creative relationship with it, it was just very obvious to me that my preference for expressing the story was like on a stage, solo performance. Like for whatever reason I always kind of clearly saw it that way, and it was kind of the path of least resistance in terms of actually writing it. So I didn't question it, and I just kind of went with it, and now it exists.
Amazing. That's awesome. And what's the style of the show? Are you playing multiple characters? Is it just yourself um, talking the whole time? I mean, it'll be you talking the whole time, but are you playing different characters or just one character?
Yeah, I do like embody the other characters in the story. Yeah.
Nice. And
Yeah.
how do you differentiate between the different characters? Is it physically or vocally?
Kind of just like subtly, yeah, like little vocal shifts. We also use like lighting as a way to delineate and establish like themes and places and recognizable, like, oh, when the mom is on, like we kind of get this kind of warmy red light and stuff like that. So a little combination of all of the elements at our disposal to just help kind of clarify and tell the story.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what are some things that you wanted to capture in this performance? Like obviously you had the abortion and then you wanted to write about it, but what parts of it did you want to highlight?
I think like like the show is undeniably an abortion story. As I said, I had an abortion, then I wrote a show about it, and like abortion is definitely the inciting incident. But really, if you like come to see the show, I hope what you take away from it that it's abortion is the entry point, but it's really just an opportunity of expressing the multiple systemic crises that are happening in society right now to make life harder and shittier than it really needs to be. So I wanted to not only did I want to like share my personal abortion story because I was just a person who like abortion in my life was a very revelatory experience. There was it was a big kind of I learned a lot of different things both about myself as a person but also like the world that I lived in. So having it be a kind of cataclysmic event that was both simultaneously not a big deal and a huge fucking deal, the duality of that I felt was like very good fertile ground for storytelling and drama. But I also like I want to like go to plays where people are talking about how fucking expensive rent is and like how are we all actually going to are we all going to be eating cat food when we're 80? Like do you want a kid but you are like terrified of affording one? Yeah, me too. And like I honestly don't see that all the time when I go to theater, and so compared to how much real estate that takes up in my conversations with like my friends, I was just kind of like, I can't believe we're not having more of this discourse on stage. And I will happily contribute some of it. So that's kind of the long winded answer to that question.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And after this performance, do you have ambitions to make it into like a movie or a short film or a series or anything like that? Or you want it to live on stage?
I would definitely be open to adapting it to the screen in some capacity. This is the first time I've ever written anything for the stage, but before this, I've made a lot of like web series and short films. It is kind of my preferred medium of expression. I just like the flexibility that, film has, and also you put in all this effort and then at least it exists forever, whereas with theater you put in all this effort and it disappears, and literally did it even happen? So yes to film adaptation. I'm also currently though after the first production of it in 2023, I did enter into a book deal with a publisher, so I have to um, deliver on that job as well. So we'll see what mortal time allows me to do.
Amazing. And with the
Yeah.
book deal, do you have to like deliver a certain amount of pages for the book, or they're just saying, write what you got?
Kind of right what you got. Like it's back and I think I think an editor's relationship with their author is like really um individual for each thing. And my editor, luckily, is cool, and um, they recognize that this is, for me, this story is part of kind of like now become a larger umbrella project. Like I've got the play. I also have a podcast that's like a companion project to it, which is currently rolling out its second season. So we have a bit more of a, I wouldn't, casual isn't quite the right word for it, but they see the vision of like, you're currently building these two big things that need your attention while they like are about to meet an audience, and then we need to get back to chapter 5 kind of thing going on. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. And what's your background in the entertainment industry? How did you get the creative bug?
Yeah, I started acting. Like I got I got an agent when I was in high school. I went to an arts high school, and I did start um like working in TV while I was still in high school, and then like I went to theater school and have managed to um earn enough of a living since graduating with my diploma to like continue identifying as an artist.
That's awesome. Continue
Yeah.
identifying as an artist. So true. The struggle is real.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's awesome. Are you union?
Yes. Yeah, I'm ACTRA and I'm in the Equity, the theater union.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And when you're producing this piece of work, does it have to be under the union?
It does have to be under Equity. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And is there any special loopholes that you have to jump over for that? Or because it's a one woman show, it's a little bit easier?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Okay, so with this time round, I don't thankfully don't have to deal with this stuff because the presenting companies have the relationship with Equity, and um there was no issue. Like they just have to be Equity on this version of the production because something like the companies are like signatories with equity or something like this. I'm a bad association member. I like don't really understand how it works and like to complain about it a lot, full transparency. So there's that. The issue this time around was the first production, my stage manager isn't a member of equity. And the show is like very cuey. Like by that I mean the sound, lighting, projection cues. I think there's like over 200 of them or something like that. So basically, like me and my stage manager are like kind of doing the show together because they're having to ride my text very precisely. And like I can't fuck up my text too much because it'll fuck up a cue. So it's a very like in my performance is intertwined with their job very intimately. And because my stage manager last time was an equity, they are not allowed to stage manage. This time we found a workaround to have them still basically production manage and be a part of the process. And also they can help teach the new stage manager how to call the show. So like that's good. But there was some labor drama.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. What are no? Let me let me go back to writing it.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, how long did it take to write it?
It came out very fast. Like, I had an abortion at the end of 2019, and like basically, like the first draft of the play on my computer is February 17th, 2020. So like the show existed in 2020, but obviously the pandemic happened and the theater didn't exist.
Yeah.
And we didn't get it up in front of audiences until the end of 2023. And like 2020, 2021, 2022, Rachel was like very frustrated by that because I just felt like impatient and like it was ready to go. And arguably it was ready to go, but also, um, in hindsight, I'm very glad that we were able to do it in 2023 and the script did evolve in those years. And I'm happy with where it landed. So, you know, pros and cons.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. And did you come up with, or did you have any moments of writer's block, or you just
Moments
breezed
of
through?
writer's block. With this one, not really, to be honest with you. I think that's one of the reasons also why I wanted to do it because, like, while in this instance, it really felt like the show was just writing itself in my own life. Like, if you come and see the play, the first scene is literally the conversation I had with my doctor when I went into the office to be like, oh, yo, how do you actually get an abortion? Um, and uh, like just little scenes in my life, the conversations I was having with people, um, my writer brain would kind of continuously light up and very quickly kind of a narrative arc of the experience. It felt very identifiable to me and I just kind of like got that down as the structure of the story and then building it out and taking creative license and liberties sort of went from there. But yeah, the kind of like A to B, what's the end of the story, um, was pretty clear to me. I will say one perhaps interesting caveat about the creative process in relationship to that is for the world premiere, I had some people like, creative sounding boards whose opinions I admire, respect, and trust, read the script and like come see rehearsals. And kind of a resounding note that I had received from like multiple sources was like a confusion about the ending scene of the play. This is all going to sound very cryptic and like less you've seen the show. So I'm going to do my best to make this helpful. um, and I'm personally of the belief that like if you get the same note from multiple sources, you should probably like investigate it. And so I did, and like I went and I rewrote other potential endings, but I just like never felt that they were better than the ending that I had originally wrote and felt was like the actual ending of it. Um, and my director kind of was with me along the way. She was also kind of like, I understand what they're saying, but also like, yeah, all these other endings that you've brought to the table aren't as good. and and then we finally got an audience, and the ending has been pretty like in the theater with people. It feels really, as a performer, it feels very right. It feels pretty um like a moment of connection with myself and the audience. And me and Courtney, after like our first preview, were like, oh, thank God we didn't change it. That's like how we want it to end. But I remember feeling like, oh man, if I could bottle this, I don't know, feeling pill, whatever, of being like, you have to have this crazy balance of being humble enough to not think that everything you do is like just amazing. And that, yeah, if people are saying, why is the ending like that, to actually look at that, investigate and interrogate it, but also to have like your own creative convictions about what you want to say as an artist, and like when to listen to that, and not from a place of like, I'm the best and you don't know what you're talking about, you know? And I didn't bottle it, and I will probably have to, deal with that same uncomfortable feeling again at a future project. But there you go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, ultimately, you got to trust your gut at the
Yeah,
end of it. But yeah, I mean, at least you tried to make an attempt of different endings. Like, yeah, you're right. If you
totally.
just ignored all the advice and you're like, actually, I know what I'm doing, then it's different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you said you had like some previews and people reading the script and giving feedback. What was the process from like script being done
Hmm.
to like rehearsals being done? We'll go to that. Like, how many previews, how many script revisions, that kind of thing.
Yeah. There's kind of like two parts to this answer. The first part is like just getting to like rehearsals in the audience, which was at the end of 2023, and that's like really like a 4-week process. That's very kind of wham bam, thank you, ma'am, by the seat of your pants. Um, the lead up to that, during like 2020 to 20, the end of 2023, was basically the process looked like endless grant applications to get enough money together to, hire all of the people you need to put a show on and do it. And it took um, a lot of reapplying for money. I did not get, I got like the first round of grants for developing the project, like doing workshops and stuff like that. But then when it came to actually getting production funding, it was like 3 rounds to the Toronto Arts Council and Ontario Arts Council, only 2 rounds to the Canada Arts Council. Um, but, and I even thought at one point in 2022, once I had released the podcast, there was a part of me that was like, maybe this was just supposed to be a podcast. And like the play helped me, directed me towards the podcast, and maybe that's it. But I had a mentor who was an artistic director at a theater after Roe was overturned in the US in June of 2022. He emailed me being like, are you going to do your play now? And I emailed back being like, no one wanted to do my play, including you. I've written a podcast about it. I've made a podcast instead. And bless him, he basically was like, reapply to all the grants. And I reapplied, and then I got them. So who knows? Grant applying what I've learned in my years of doing it now, it's like there's no rhyme or reason. Like maybe it was the zeitgeist of the reversal of abortion rights in the States, making it feel like more worthy of a conversation in Canada. Maybe it was the makeup of the juries. My grant proposals didn't evolve that much, I will say. It was like very like the pitch was always kind of the same pitch. Maybe I also had like more of a track record once the podcast came out, but anyway, I just think it's like I encourage anyone who has been rejected from a grant to reapply, because you just never know. So that was the lead up, and then once you get to the actual like production process, we had a week of rehearsals, a week of tech. We had one, two, three, I think we had four previews, and then we opened and had like we opened on a Wednesday and we closed like not that Sunday but the following Sunday, kind of like a 2 week and a couple days run. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And did you make any changes from then till now on the performance?
I have not, which is maybe like not the sexiest answer, but Nightwood, who's the co-producer of this version, they were pretty like, when they asked to program the show, they were like, "Can you like just do the show again?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm really happy to not have to rewrite it in any way." I also haven't like I don't have anything new to say yet with the show. Like, the show is still what I want to say. If I ever do it like after I have a kid, I'll probably want to make some adjustments or have some more perspective to include. But at the moment, and like that's kind of still the most authentic representation of my thoughts and feelings on the matter as of now.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so the podcast, tell me everything about the podcast.
Yeah, the podcast. I originally applied because, like, when the pandemic happened, the Canada Council released some funding into the arts economy to help like live performers sort of pivot in the pandemic. And so I applied to make an audio play. And then I got the funding, and then quickly was like, I don't want to make an audio play. Like, I don't even listen to audio plays. I do listen to podcasts though. So it kind of organically shifted. And the podcast is like the play, but it expands the lens in terms of like cultural commentary and doing more like deep dives into the various subjects that intersect with reproductive choice. The first season of the podcast, similar to the play, is like built along the arc of my personal abortion story, and from like the micro, it springboards into more macro discussions of various components of like reproductive justice in Canada. The second season of the podcast, which is just like being rolling out right now, kind of either looks at issues that we didn't have time to cover in the first season, or like didn't have time to do a deep dive on in the first season. And then there's also other people's abortion stories as like standalone episodes, which is really, I'm very proud of and love just kind of how eclectic people's experiences are, and different takes on like abortion in people's lives is like really, I'm happy to have been able to like build a platform to, hold those stories for people. So that's kind of cool.
So so this is your second season. How many
Yeah.
episodes in a season?
In the first season, there's 10 episodes, and in this season, we have 16.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you had any negative backlash from any of this?
Not really, which I think that's two things. One, I think it also is just the reality of like the humble audience that the podcast has. Like, it's not super mainstream, so that the like freaks have found it to be like boo abortion or anything like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Two, though, I think like, and this is like, if you listen to the podcast and you see the play, like, I do express this opinion. I think abortion is much more like it's perceived to be more controversial than it actually is. Like, the majority of Canadians, polling for like decades now, the majority of Canadians are like, if you need an abortion, get one. Like, and it's actually true in the States, which is just so messed up in terms of how democratic their country has become. But yeah, I think like I get that question a lot in terms of like, what's the worst stuff people have, said to you? But I haven't really gotten any horrible trolls. If anything, it's like maybe an occasional Spotify comment that's like, this podcast should be aborted. Or like, if I get any type of like press in mainstream outlets, I'll get these like really weird emails where people just like copy and paste scripture to me. And like that's always a little disconcerting because I'm like, where'd you get my email from? But I'm also like, I'm sure the internet has it in many places. So like that has happened, but they feel very innocuous and like not scary or anything like that. So
Well,
yeah.
that's good. That's
Yeah,
good. And I mean, if you're going to the show as well, you know what it's about and what you're going to
exactly.
see. So it's not like anybody walks in and goes, "Oh my god."
Yeah, exactly.
I guess I should ask the name of your podcast before I forget, so people can find your podcast.
Yes, the podcast is called Aborsh.
Aborsh.
Yeah, it's like Aborsh, like a cute
And
abortion.
excellent. I love it. And that's where anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, all the RSS
Excellent.
feeds just
Amazing. Back to your show. Did you have any changes that you had to make to the script or to the show once you brought it to the stage?
I don't think so.
It's all pretty smooth.
It was all pretty smooth. I will say
That's
like
awesome.
one like funny joke I can share is like from the 2020 version of the show to the 2023 version of the show, one thing that happened, and again, this is me being like, oh, if we had done it earlier, I wouldn't have made that choice. But basically, once the podcast came out in 2022, when I released the podcast in 2022, as I said earlier, at that point, I was like, maybe this is just a podcast, period, the end. And then this mentor was like, reapply for your grants. And then I got the grants. So once I got those grants, I kind of returned to the manuscript being like, okay, I can actually afford to put this up now. And again, it was just an instinctual creative feeling, but I was like, I think I should take everything that I've put into the podcast, everything that exists in the play that went into the podcast, I should take that out of the play script because, um, you know, people are probably going to experience both projects. So why I don't want it to be too repetitive. I want them to kind of both offer different things. So I took stuff out of the play script that had been in the podcast, and then there was kind of more room to put more story in. And one of the I guess like pieces of feedback that I had received while doing like readings and stuff like that for friends and sounding boards was kind of a curiosity to reveal more about my aka the characters. Like it's a very autobiographical piece, so I'll just say like it's me, even though it's me with some of like the volume turned up or down depending on the circumstance. But anyway, basically kind of more people wanted more information about my relationship and the boyfriend character. And so in 2022, I kind of added that beefed up that boyfriend storyline. And I had read the play to my partner before that storyline had been changed. And so he was kind of like familiar with it. And then when we were in like tech for the show, my stage manager, there's like a line in the show where my mom says to me, which she did say to me in real life, which is why it's in the show, but basically like my partner and I have had a very like on and off again relationship, and during one of our offs, I was lamenting to my mom about that I missed him and like maybe I'd made a mistake kind of thing. And my mom said, Rachel, he's working poor and you need working rich. And
Oh, no.
and I put it in the play.
Yeah.
But my stage manager, because like my mom was going to come see it and my boyfriend was going to come, they'd both be there at opening. And my stage manager was like, did your boyfriend know that your mom said that about him? And I was like, actually, No, he doesn't. Actually, there's a bunch that he doesn't know is in here now. And I went home and my partner was going to come on opening, but I came home and I was like, maybe
Come
you
on a
should.
different night.
Yeah, I was like, first I was like, maybe you should read it before you see it. And he was like, why? I was like, because I've added more stuff about our relationship and you should make like I don't know, just maybe get a heads up. And he was like, what? And I was like, I think you actually I think I come across as more neurotic than you. I think you actually come across quite well. He was like, what are you talking about? um and so he came to like a preview to understand what I was implying. And at the end, I mean, he's a great supportive person. He was like, I think it's a great show. And you're right. I do come across as more grounded and relatable than you. I was like, you're welcome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to see the video where mom and boyfriend come opening night. There's
I
the
know.
awkward car ride home. We're like, so what'd you think?
I know. I can't. It's so funny. It's funny. My partner was like, I don't even understand what your mom means by that comment, and I was like, I know. That's the problem.
It's like, good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. But they were cool. They were, you know.
That's amazing. That is so funny.
Yeah.
Have you had any conversations with mom, partner, or any other people referenced in the story after the show that was uncomfortable, funny? Anything in particular that comes to mind?
No, not really. Like because I don't know. I think they're just like moments from our actual life. So when they see them on stage, I think they're just kind of like, "Yep, that's what happened." Um,
That's good.
I will say, like with my partner, it's like life is complex. He is proud of me and happy that I am getting to do what I love to do. But it's also like one of those things where he's like not from his circle of friends and stuff like that, like not everyone's invited, it is still really personal. So it's like either you have to be like really inner circle or like no dice. And he was like, it's one thing. He's like, I kind of don't care if strangers see the story because they don't know me, they don't know you. Like there's anonymity in the strangeness of it. But if it's like there's like certain friends that I wouldn't want them to see it. And I like respect that. And I'm like, that's totally fair. They don't have to see it if you don't want them to.
Yeah, for sure.
And my mom has is a bit of a muse for me artistically. Like she has featured in a lot of my other writing and like web series and stuff like that. So she's kind of been she she's used to it. She's is basically like, oh, you just plagiarize my life for your own creative interests. I'm kind of like, yeah, well,
Well, you brought me here.
yeah. And I'm also like, then stop saying such great, like juicy hot takes. And if you're a little more boring, then I won't have anything to,
To
put
write.
it into. So it's on you.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That is so funny. Is there any, without like ruining any of the story plot or anything like that, was your mom supportive of
Yes.
your abortion and stuff like that? Or
Yes. And
yeah, that's good.
like the mom character in the show, like the show is a bit of a love letter to my mom. And I really think she's like
Oh,
the unsung hero of the play. She's, not, she's a supporting character, but she's just there in really like pivotal moments. And I begin to understand my life through learning more about her life. And, yeah, it's like she's a pretty foundational part of the story in a way that I like as somebody who's written it. For me, I hope and I like that it's kind of calibrated as a story that's not obvious off the jump, but by the end of the show, you're like, oh my God, this woman's mom. Like, so yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. What's the best piece of advice you've got from your mom?
Oh my God. That's a great question. I've gotten a lot of really good advice from her. It's taken me, I haven't always listened to it right away.
Oh my God, same.
I'm sometimes quite delayed at listening to it. But I like, she has been her track record on like advice. Like, as I get older, the more I I try to like listen to it quicker because I've been alive for 36 years now, and like every fucking time I'm like, fuck, she was right again. Like
Right? Isn't that the worst? You're
yeah, and
sitting
I'm
here
like,
like,
can I get the
damn
turnaround quicker? Like maybe I can just do it the way she wanted me to the first time. Like
it. Right?
um
Nope.
it's like these are very broad ones. I'm sure there's like better advice that she's like given me, but like very guiding pieces that immediately come to mind. Listen, I mean, this one's controversial, but I do agree with her. She's like, you can never change a man.
Yep.
um, she's like, uh, I guarantee you 10 years from now, you'll look back at this photo and you'll feel like an asshole for not just enjoying how hot you were.
Yeah, I do that now with
Yeah.
like not even 10 years ago. Like
Yeah.
a year, 2 years. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
You're
I
so
thought I was
hot.
fat. What?
Yeah. No, I was so hot. I'm like, hey, just try to just feel how hot you are.
Yes.
Um, uh, just my mom also has like very good, luckily, very good like financial advice. So I've always been like a very big saver. My mom, there's like another line in the show, but like she, she's basically was like, I always chose houses over husbands because they're more likely to take care of you when you're old. I don't have a house because I am a
Love.
millennial.
Yeah,
But
I
that
know.
kind of ethic in terms of like take care of yourself, figure out how to do it.
Yes.
The force is strong. She's definitely instilled that in me.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah,
Independent woman.
yeah, big time.
I love it. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
she was also like, please don't be an actor, but
We haven't listened to that one yet.
no, it's like I it's like the one that gives me the most existential despair because like consistently I'm like, oh, you should do what she says, and every time she's like, are you sure you want to keep doing this? And I'm like, yeah, shut up.
Right? Like, it's really hard when she's nailing everything else.
Yeah,
You're like, no, but this one
exactly.
I can guarantee you're wrong about.
I
Guarantee.
know. I know.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So with your acting outside of this, are you with an agent
Yeah, I do
currently?
have an agent. Yeah.
Excellent. Who's your agent? Shout out.
My agent, I'm repped by ETM in Toronto.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. How long have you been with them?
Since like 2016, like since I moved to Toronto, I've been with them.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Where did you move to Toronto from?
I was living in England before this because I went to theater
What?
school there. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So you
Yeah.
can act.
Yeah. I'm like capital A actor.
That's right. Because that's all that comes from the UK.
I mean, it was a really amazing experience in that way. And like my snobby, bougie 18-year-old self was right about that. Like, I basically went to England because I wanted to go to theater school. Okay, I was like, Rachel, do you want to say this while you're being recorded? But I'm like, this is my what my 18-year-old self thought. Okay, I like didn't want to go to theater school in Canada. I was like, why would I go to theater school in Canada? You need to go to New York or you need to go to London. That's where the theater is happening. And listen, you can come and fight me. I know theater is happening throughout Canada, but like the way that it's happening in New York and London, it is not happening that
It's a
way.
whole other
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was also in an acting cult as a teenager, which is something that we can talk about and I'm fine with. And
Yes, please.
my teacher at the time was very like poo poo to institutional Canadian acting training.
Mm.
Um, So that also was like, I'm like, okay, well, it's New York or London or bust. And I totally choked my Juilliard audition. So I didn't get in. And then
I'm
I
just
was like,
impressed you had a Juilliard
thank
admission.
you. Thank you. And then I ended up getting into RADA and going there. And um yeah, I will say like I had a very unique, lucky and overall like good experience professionally. As a person, I think it was like really amazing to go to Europe and also get, as somebody who's very fortunate to have like a close relationship with my parents, have like a coming of age on like a different continent.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, like while I was in school, I saw a play. I think in my first year, I'm like not even over exaggerating. Like I went to the theater every night.
Amazing.
You just can. There was that much going on, and it was also really accessible for students price wise. There was a lot of like deals where you literally like pay 5p, go stand at the Royal Court. Like it was pretty dreamy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was.
That's awesome. Let's dive right into that acting, Colin.
So
I don't want to forget this.
yeah, yeah. So like I went to an arts high school in Vancouver, and when we had like a professional development day, when there was like a student there, I was maybe in like grade 8 and they were in grade 11 or something like that. And I remember them saying in this workshop that they went to acting classes um at this like studio in Gastown. And at that point I had like done some extracurricular acting classes like outside of school, but they were very much like for kids, you know what I mean? Like at the equivalent of young people's theater, but like in Vancouver kind of thing. And so I was kind of intrigued about like, oh, this is a guy who's like technically still in high school. He's technically a teenager like me, but he's like training at what seems to be an actual like adult studio. Like, could I maybe as well? And um the answer was yes. And that studio had like a weekend like young professional program, and it was super culty, but it was also kind of great. Like I look back at it and I'm like, man, that was fucked up, but that was also awesome. Like
I
it was
love it.
it was just like we were a group of teenagers who all were like equally geeky and passionate about acting and storytelling and like so hormonal and emotional. And it became like, for me, became a safe space where I could really actually engage with like my instrument. I mean, I'm sure it was awful overacting, but like we would really just like test the extremities of like joy, sadness, anger, fear in like and like do crazy scenes that we were like too young for, but like have exposure to the like playwright like theater canon and do like text analysis. And so that was all of the amazing stuff. And like my high school, I don't know where else I would have accessed that. Like it did give me that type of education and early exploration of like my instrument as an artist that yeah, wouldn't have happened in school. So that was kind of the good stuff. The bad stuff was that, like, I, again, as I've said earlier, like, I'm very close with my parents. I think of myself as a pretty, like, emotionally fortified person. Um, the power dynamics that the teacher would really bring into play in the room, I think for kids who either had not that, like, kind of secure attachment at home or just a bit more lost in terms of their coming of age could quickly become unsafe and toxic. I didn't experience it as such because of being safe at home, feeling supported and loved for who I was from my parents and like not needing that from other people. But yeah, I think there were kids in that room who didn't have that. And it was a weirder, more fucked up experience for them. And then I started working with like one of the adult instructors there. And when I started working with the adult instructor, the instructor who like only taught the teens like dumped me and I couldn't work with her anymore because it was territorial, because it was culty. And then I was kind of like excommunicated from that group of people, which was heartbreaking and devastating to me as like a 17-year-old. But I also felt like I had kind of outgrown that particular learning environment and wanted something new. So I started working with that coach. And that coach, again, like artistically, I feel very fortunate to have had like that kind of rigorous training and commitment to the craft in terms of like a learning environment and scene study. And I can't tell, like, what I suspect is it's probably a little from column A and a little from column B. I think this teacher got a little bit more cultier as her student body grew. Some of her students became more successful. I also think I learned how to see the cultiness as I matured as a person. So it was kind of like both were happening at the same time, I think. And so from like 18 to 26, I trained with this teacher. And like during that time, I went away to drama school. It wasn't like consistent. And they also kind of like travel around different cities. So I would kind of like meet up and train whenever I was in the same city and had the money for class kind of thing. Um, but like, I don't know. After I came back from theater school and the next time I studied with her after like graduating theater school, I had like a really, like basically bad time in class where it was kind of like nothing that I did could be considered good. And I
Mm.
sort of felt like she was trying to like make an example of me or something like that because I'd gone to this prestigious institute that she was sort of trying to be like, you think you can go study somewhere and be great, but no, only people who study with me are great kind of thing. Like it felt a little bit like that. But it was also very like classic culty thing where it would like build you up, tear you down. So you'd oscillate between going to class and being told by her of like, that's the best work I've ever seen you do, to like weeks at a time where nothing you do is passable and she makes you feel like shit kind of thing. Um, and eventually I personally, like I had to get to a place in my own maturity where I could just kind of see what it was. And I honestly just got to a place where I was like, I don't want to pay for this anymore. Like, and I also had started making my own work by that point. So every time I coughed over like $300 for a couple of weeks of acting class, I'd be like, that's a that's the fee for a sound guy for one day on set. So it just became like, why am I doing this? It's like not enjoyable anymore. And also her her voice, because she'd been such a formative teacher, was a real voice in my head. But I realized around the time that I eventually left, like her voice was in my head and it was not a nice voice. It was like a, I don't believe you. Like it was a very negative voice. And I just knew, I was like, this is a hard enough industry as it is. Like if I'm really gonna take a stab at it, I have to have a positive voice in my head that's saying, yeah, go for it. You can go. And she just wasn't giving me that. She would give other people that in that class, but I wasn't one of those people. So I was like, peace, bye. And kind of never looked back. And, I mean, I do look back on the experience and I have that real 50-50 mix. I look at it and I go, there were some kind of amazing things. And I'd be the artist that I am today without it for sure. But I think it kind of accelerated my confidence as an artist a little bit just because I really like put my 10,000 hours in by training with her in that way. And just having that practice at it allowed me to like do auditions, think I could go to RADA, like that kind of stuff because of my time in those classrooms with those culty teachers. On the other hand, I'm also like, it's pretty fucked up. Um, and I also saw like abusive behavior in those rooms too. And I'm just like, oh, too bad. It's like, I think that they're genuinely, like, I think intuitive and gifted artists. There's just some sort of like broken internal need for power that like corrupts the learning environment. And that's a shame.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
For those who are like looking for acting classes or coaching, what were some of the like red flags looking back now that you would say, if you see this or if this is like a continued behavior, maybe not.
I definitely say the like building you up to bring you down, putting you on that like cycle of like, that was great, you're doing amazing. Oh, now you're not doing amazing anymore and you're plateauing. I don't know. This is just my own personal style, and like people find mentors and coaches that work well for them. But with actors, and like I now teach actors, I don't really think you need to be critical of actors. I think they're going to be critical enough of themselves.
So
I
true.
and you know, it's like acting. I feel bad for saying this because again, like you can easily like come at me, but I don't know. I kind of don't think you can teach acting. Like you totally can. There are
Yeah.
like structures and techniques and all that kind of stuff, but I think like when acting is like really singing, when people are like in a performance that's really like in the moment, I don't know how much of that is like really within that person's like control. Anyway, all that's and like I also kind of think like with like the heavier stuff in terms of like genuinely listening and responding and being present and like needing to cry if you have to, all that kind of stuff, like I just think it's such an inside job, and you can have mentors that give you confidence or make you feel safe to like explore and mess around and like figure out how what you need to do to feel fortified in different settings to do that, whether it's like on set or on stage or in an audition room or whatever. But I think it all ultimately comes from the person who is like creating the form of expression. So I when I look for mentors or teachers, I just try to find people who are like who make me feel good and who make it fun, because it's hard enough. So like no need to like add turmoil onto it. And I'd also kind of be like, just go to therapy. Like, I kind of think,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of like, my therapist is the best acting teacher. She's just like, well, learn who you are. Therefore, you will be able to authentically portray yourself. You will also be able to like understand, maybe get insight into why other people are the way they are, and then have your hand at portraying that. So, yeah, my current acting teacher of advice is just like find a great therapist.
I love that. That's amazing. Good therapy is important. But
Because
it sounds
sometimes,
like from that class, like the being safe enough to go to the extremes of emotion, like
yes,
really happy, really sad,
yeah,
that would be really nice. I
it
think that would be really
was.
great.
And like, it was really magic, especially in that like teenager group that I was with. We really could do that. And it was kind of like, we were together for a couple of years, like doing that every weekend while we were in high school. It was amazing. And I will say that like when I came back to the adult culty actor, I could also no longer really participate that way in the class. But it was also because I was like, this doesn't feel like, it felt very ick. It felt very like indulgent and just kind of like manipulated. And so it really requires such a unique, special environment to
Hmm.
like create that. So if you can find it, that's kind of lucky, and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. Is there any questions or anything else you wanted to touch on before I ask you a couple of final questions?
No, we've had a nice meandering conversation, which I have
Yeah.
appreciated.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. Got into so much that I didn't expect to get into.
Good.
But yeah, that was awesome. My final couple questions are: what is something you would tell your younger self starting out in the industry?
Oh man. I started doing this like pretty early on, but if I could go in a time machine and start even earlier on than that, I would really just be like, make your own work. Like, be
Mm,
open for the phone to ring and like collaborate on other people's stuff. But just
yes.
increasingly, I'm like, I kind of don't know how you sustain a career if you don't do it, because the competition is so fierce and the opportunities seemingly continue to just diminish. And so I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, be ready for the opportunities when they're there and like really focus your attention on making your own stuff. And yeah, I in my mid 20s I started doing that, but even as a young person, like even earlier, if I could go back, I'd be like, start now, go.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. That's awesome. And I was thinking about that earlier today. I was thinking even the A-list celebrities have other things going
Yes.
on. They're
They sell
selling
perfume.
alcohols. They're
Yes.
they're doing all of the things. They're
Yeah.
directing. They're trying different
Yeah.
skills even within just being on a set. So yeah, even A-list actors are not just sitting and waiting for the phone to ring.
No, no, no. So that is true.
Right. And my final question to you is, if you could give this chapter of your life a title, what would you title
OMG. I might call it Hypothetical Baby
it?
just
Yes.
because to bring it full circle, but also like this chapter of my life, as you'll see in the show, I'm a very broody 36-year-old. Like I come to the abortion conversation of like, yo, I want kids. I just don't want to be poor having kids. Again, bold
Yes.
statement to say, because I know people like, one of the things that happened, again, why that conversation with my doctor became the first scene of the play, because in when I went to go and ask for an abortion, because I admittedly like had no idea how one went about getting an abortion,
Hmm.
um my doctor asked me how much money I made and how much money my partner made, and I just in the moment told him, because I just wanted to like jump through the hoops to get this answer to like, how am I going to get this abortion, my guy? Um,
Yeah.
but I was also like, rude, none of your business. Also, how much do you make, Mr. Doctor?
Yeah, I would have been like, not enough, sir, not enough.
But at the time, my partner and I, as a couple, were earning like just over $100,000, and he was like, lots of people raise kids on less than that, and like that's true. And it's
And they're
interesting.
sad.
And it's hard,
It is
harder than it
hard.
needs to be.
Yeah.
um
And it sounds like that should be enough money. Like it
well, it
sounds like a
used to be
good,
enough money.
exactly. Like
It
that
used
sounds
to
like
be
a
enough money
huge number.
when your down payment for a home was $6,000.
Yeah.
Literally how much my mom bought her home
Exactly.
for, also in the
Yeah.
show. So like, I had the abortion at 31. It's been 5 years, and like, I'm somebody who's always felt like I wish I didn't want kids. Like, my life, uh, it's like less expensive. Like, you don't have to be pregnant. All these things, but I existentially, like, I do want the experience of like having a family, having kids, being a parent. I do want that.
Mm.
And a big part of my life, that I'm grateful that my art and means of expression has been able to like speak to, but a big part of the last 5 years of my life has been trying to get my house in order to do that. So that's like, the abortion for me and my partner was a big like, do we want to be together? Like, is this it? Like, are you the person who I want to have children with and therefore will be in my life for the rest of it, regardless of like how the relationship goes? Is that you? On top of like, can I still be an artist and be a parent? Like, can we earn enough money to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. Like all of these things have been kind of like actually the day-to-day background of life for me, also for my partner. Um, and I'm really grateful that the play and the podcast have been able, like, it's a place where I'm able to put some of those anxieties,
Mm-hmm.
existential questions, advocacy. Um, and we actually have, I mean, listen, who knows? I think this year we will try to have a baby. Hopefully, I'll have a literal baby soon. But it's more so coming from a place of like, I'll be 37, my partner will be 38. It's just like, unless we want to start having to like pay for fertility treatments,
Yeah.
we're kind of like looking at it like, well, we can't push it that much further. We're better off than we were previously. It's still not great, but we can kind of see how it might function. So let's try. But, and on one hand, I'm like grateful that we've arrived at this place. On the other hand, I'm like furious that it's still such a fucking slog and seems, um, yeah, there's just been like a lot of, I'm grateful my partner is someone who, like, I feel like we've laid really good foundational groundwork in terms of the ways in which our relationship will likely be tested when we have a kid, financially, space, in terms of how our work life will have to be recalibrated.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like a lot. It's a lot. It's dense.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I could talk to you so much more about this, but I should probably wrap up the episode, then we can talk more after.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. Let us know one more time when your show dates are and where people can get tickets.
Yes, come see Hypothetical Baby at Factory Theater from February 22nd to March 8th. If you go to the Factory Theater website, the tickets are there. I will also say, little special shout out to your listeners. If you want a little cheeky discount on those tickets,
Mm-hmm.
you can use the promo code Aborsh10. So Aborsh, which is my podcast name, which is it put in all capital letters ABORSH, like a cute abortion. The number 10, and you'll get a little extra off the top.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's
You're
awesome. I'm
welcome.
so excited to see it. I can't wait.
Oh, thank you for coming.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much.